today we've got three reviews. We got K-Pop Demon Hunters, How to Train Your Dragon, and Fantastic Four First Steps. So yeah, we got plenty to get into today, so let's just get into it. Um, First, we're gonna talk about K-Pop Demon Hunters. So K-Pop Demon Hunters is an animated film from Sony Pictures about a trio of girls who are simultaneously a K-pop band and demon hunters, believe it or not. It follows Rumi, Mira, and Zoe, girls who have been chosen to be the newest generation of singers whose voices protect the world with the Hone Moon against which is a veil that protects us against demons, right? Okay, so pretty simple concept, not too out of this world, pretty fun. This film has a lot of hype around it. It's like it's literally like if TikTok created a movie, like I don't know how else to describe it, but I think in a lot of ways it works. I eventually gave into the hype. I had some friends, quite a few of my friends who were telling me to watch this. Finally I was like, all right, I watch. I'm not the biggest fan of K-pop, not because I like hate it or whatever, but just because it's never really been my genre of music. So I don't want to come in here sounding like a fake fan or something. I just have never really been into K-pop like that. I have heard some songs that I liked, like well, I don't the beats. I like some of the BTS songs, but what do they know about making cameras? Just kidding. Um, but I finally gave in. I decided to watch this. I like the animations. Well, the animation about I've never been afraid to say that I enjoy cartoons per se. I'm not one of those people. I can watch any kind of movie and enjoy it for what it is. Um, and along with the great animation I think this movie has is the soundtrack, which is absolutely amazing. It's literally banger after banger after banger to the point where I'm worried about my Spotify Wraps this year. I'm afraid it's gonna call me a K-pop girly or something. Last year I got like I don't know. I think it was like Pink Pony Girly or something like that. Like, hey, I'm not a girly guys. I'm a guy. I'm a guy's guy. Come on, guys. Guy. No, but I do listen to quite a bit of pop music too, so I won't be surprised if this ends up in my Spotify Wrapped. Um, I was immediately down for the music as soon as the first song started. I think how it's done. It was a great way to start the film. It really has a great gives a great introduction to these characters and their personalities and kind of what their goals are. So for a musical, obviously it's gonna be a good intro if you get all those in there. Um, as far as the animation goes, I really enjoyed it because especially like the faces they made, it kind of gave me uh it reminded me a lot of like anime and stuff like that, which I love anime. I watched a bunch of it. It made me remember that like the faces, like how they get like super dramatized and like just unworldly, unhuman, and I was afraid of how that would mix because this CG 3D animation that has taken over Hollywood in the past like 15, 20 years or so is I think it inspired to make things look more realistic. And so when you take something that's supposed to look more realistic and combine it with that unrealistic anime style, what do you get? And I think you get something that often works really, really well and has a lot of comedy to it. The dramatic nature of their faces and their actions, I think, is quite funny. So, and I think that really works for this. Um, I think the acting is really good as well. All the voices sounded like distinct and believable. I didn't have an issue with any of that. None of the characters felt like goofy or anything like that. I think they all felt pretty real. Um, I guess some standouts for me would probably have to be as far as the voices go. You got and people in small roles too, like Daniel Day Kim as the that weird doctor guy, and then you got Kim Jong as the or Ken Jong as the as Bobby, the manager. And then you got I don't know his name, the guy from Squid Game as the which for people in Korea, me saying the guy from Squid Game is probably like annoying as hell, but that's what I know him from. I'm sorry, but the guy from Squid Game as is it Weema? I think that's how you say it, Gima, something like that. Basically like the demon lord, right? So that was I think they were all really good standouts for me. Um, let's see, I do think there are some negatives though. come along with all these positives that I'm giving it, right? Like it's all got all these good things for sure, but some things that didn't work so well for me would probably be the story itself. I don't have a problem with like how the story, like what the story is about. Like I don't think that's the issue. I think it's more of how the story flows and how the beats of the story. You know, as someone who writes and someone who wants to write movies and has written screenplays before, you know, everything that is going on here is very by the book as far as timing. Like you literally have this big dramatic downfall of the characters that happens, and I checked my watch. It was like, yeah, not like yeah, there's 30 minutes left of the movie exactly. Like that's almost so textbook that it's crazy. So I'm like, oh, and you know, a lot of people that I was talking to some friends about this, and they were like, you know, it's a kids movie. Like just have fun with it. It's a kids movie. Like okay, fine. It's a kids movie, I guess. If you want to say anything that's animated is for kids, inherently, which I mean, I guess that's somewhat true for the most part. But I think that a movie should be able to stand on its own for all of its parts, you know? Um, I think that if you're gonna have a movie, it needs to be a story worth telling. And if the story isn't worth telling, then why am I watching it? You know, why am I sitting here for an hour and a half of my time of my day that could be spent doing a plethora of other things? So with that was kind of like my biggest issue was I just didn't feel like the beats were as uh like all the beats that are supposed to be there are there, but I just didn't feel like there was anything original coming from that. You know, like nothing to change up what we've seen in the past. It's for sure a fun movie with some good songs, but like I don't know, maybe I'm being too critical, perhaps that's what I've been told, but I didn't it didn't that didn't sit well with me when I was watching it like, oh, okay, so yeah, this is literally just by the books, animated for kids movie. You know, I feel like with all the other things that were there, it could have been more. You know, I think that was probably my biggest gripe with that. Like with the biggest conflict of the movie, it's literally something that can be solved by just having a conversation, which of course is a conflict that can happen, and that drives quite a few movies, especially movies for kids, right? But I I I felt like it could have been made better. Like, okay, what if she had the conversation that she needed to have, but their reactions weren't what she wanted, and then you still have the conflict, but it changes up with the except for I just don't want to talk about it. Like, it's not about you. Like all these different things that are coming out in this movie. So that I think was something that was bothersome for me. Just that it just felt so cliche and by the books. Um, and then another one that goes along with these emotional beats, which is I think it's the last song in the movie. It might have been another one after that, but it's the what's it called? I have it written down here. Oh, What It Sounds Like. So yeah, What It Sounds Like starts at the end of the movie after everything is fallen and coming apart, and the main characters had this dramatic um like meeting with her mother figure, and had this big like I don't want what you want type deal, right? They leave that and they jump to this next part with the song, and to me it just didn't feel like it was believable, you know, like I don't want to spoil too much of the movie, but she literally says, if this is the home moon I'm meant to protect, then it's not then I'm glad to see it destroyed. And then all of a sudden it's switched up, and now she's got her own thing going, and like she starts singing and everyone comes back together. I don't know. I just I think this is one of those movies that definitely could have benefited from about 10 to 20 more minutes of time just to kind of flesh it out a bit more. I think there were a lot of things that they weren't able to say with the time that they were allotted. And I think that would have helped that land more because the song is great. It's a great song. And the visuals for everything is just so good that I really feel like if they just had a little bit more time to flesh out the story, this movie would have been much, much better than an art. And it's not a bad movie. I still think it's really good. I just think those things make it not as great as it could be for me. Um, let's see. I think that's pretty much what I have. That being said, you know, I did enjoy the film. I'm actually really intrigued to see more from this universe, whether it's a prequel or a sequel. You know, there's so much prequel potential with with Rumi's story. You know, her mother is a one of the demon hunters, and her father is a demon. That's crazy. It's like that's literally what part of this story could have been. You know, with her and Jin. I want to say Jinya, but I think that's a ramen place. I think it's Jinu. Yeah, Genu, and like that part, I think their song together that was great. Like I have to have a whole movie kind of based around that. That would have been great. You know, if we could see that coming, or if there's more story to tell with these girls, great. Then let's hear it. But let's give them more time to have a better story, and have it paced out better. Because if that was solved, then I think we have something really great here. You know, something really great for kids, adults, anybody that would want to enjoy this movie. Um, you know, but I do still think all the good things in this movie outweigh the bad for the most part. I think this is really something that you can sit down, have a good time with it, just about anybody, and they will enjoy it. I mean, I've had friends that watched it who you wouldn't think would like something like this, but they do, and that's great. You know, because it's got so many good qualities. You know, it is easy to like separate yourself from the bad qualities. Very much so. So you know, just for the bad qualities alone, you know, I think it doesn't it stops it from being great. But I will still give this a 6.5 out of 10. You know, better than your average movie for sure. Better than a lot of animated movies that I've seen this year, but not quite as good as it could be, sadly. But that you know, I would still love to see more. Yeah. All right. So next we get into How to Train Your Dragon 2025, right? Let's not forget that 2025. That's important. So, How to Train Your Dragon is a live action remake of a personally beloved animated film from 2010. It is based off a 2003, which that 2010 movie is based off a 2003 book titled How to Train Your Dragon by Cressida Cowell. It follows the story of Hiccup, a young Viking boy who does nothing but cause trouble for his village and annoy all the people that live in there. And yeah, his father just so happens to be the chief. So, it takes place in this world where dragons are a regular nuisance, and Hiccup is the only Viking who can't kill one. Everything changes for him in his world, when he befriends another dragon he names Toothless. So, I'm gonna start this off by saying I'm a very big fan of the original 2010 film. I think it's a classic and one of my favorite films in general. I actually also read the books as a kid. I remember reading that first book and I thought I had such a good time with it. I didn't think it was like the greatest literature of all time. You know, I thought it was just a fun kid book. You know, because it is. Um, so yeah, I liked the book, and then the film, the 2010 version, comes out and changes so much about the book and actually makes it better. Like it takes this little children's book and turns it into this emotional, compelling, beautifully crafted story. You know, it deviates like completely except for like names and places from the book, right? And it's one of those beautiful instances where they take the original source material and make it better. It doesn't happen all the time, especially with adaptions, right? Where you get something that's better than the original. But I think there's absolutely a case of that. Um, so with so much being with so much being with there's so much being that I loved about the original movie. Now we sit here with this 2025 live action remake of that movie, and you have to wonder, is a live action version needed? Does it improve on its source material, or is it worth watching? So for me, you know, I don't really think it improves upon the source material. A lot of this film is just a shot for shot remake. There are a few new scenes added to kind of explain some things that are different from the original, but it doesn't make or break the movie. And by that I mean like there's a few scenes so, like in the original cartoon, if I'm thinking about it correctly, there's like no other like races. I think they're all like white people, white Vikings, which isn't necessarily impossible to believe. Viking Nordic culture is generally European and white, right? So, but in this movie, they have other races of people. They have black people, they got Asian people, and I think some Mexican people. They got all different kinds of races of people in this world. And so to explain that, they have a whole scene where they're kind of like talking themselves up before they go. They're gonna go look for the dragon nest, and Stoic is like talking up these people like, yeah, you come from the I don't it's a terrible accent. Yeah, that's not how he sounds. But he's like, you come from, the Asian seas or whatever. You come from these different places, and you're here now, and we're all Vikings, and we're amazing and badass, and blah blah blah, right? So, yeah, I mean that's pretty much all that's added. That's not any original, and I don't think it makes or breaks this movie. I think it's interesting and cool to have different races of people in there. It's hey, everyone deserves a job, right? So let's give as many people a job as we can, right? That's how I feel about a lot of race swapping and stuff. But there's not necessarily any race swapping here. Um, I think Astrid, the girl that plays her, I think she is black. She's in The Last of Us, I believe. So she is, you know, darker skinned, but also like the light version of a darker skinned person for sure. And her Astrid in the original movie is a blonde white girl. I don't think it makes or breaks anything. I don't think it's necessarily better or worse. It's just a different looking version of that same character. She captures all the essence of her pretty well. So that wasn't an issue. But yeah, they definitely played it safe when it came to the story and the production of this movie. Some say that may be a good thing, some say that may be a bad thing. For me, it doesn't really matter. Um, I don't think that this film needs to exist, but other than just a blank cash grab, I can see some argument as to why it does exist. Like, I think the original created this great world, this beautiful world with great characters and a beautiful story that I believe deserves to be seen by everybody. And I guess this movie being live action makes it accessible for more people. But for me personally, if your reasoning for not watching a movie is that falls under the category of animation, and your reasoning for not liking is I don't like cartoons, then maybe you just don't like movies. Maybe read a book or something else, because any form that a story can be told, in a movie should be appreciated if you enjoy film. Animation is no different. Some things just work better under that medium, and you're holding yourself back from a world of great movies by just completely disregarding animation. Um, so as far as this film goes, it's near impossible not to compare it to that original animated version when it sticks so closely to it. And with that being said, I wanted to go in hating it because I don't believe that it needed to be made, but the story and the world is just so good that I found myself being drawn in again. I think sticking close to the original was good in that sense. If you like the original, I can't really see any reason why you wouldn't like this. Um, it's like seeing the same movie that you love, but through a different lens. And I think all the actors did well. They stuck closely to the original characters, also while doing but they stuck very closely to the original characters while also sometimes giving them a new feel. Especially Mason Thames, and Nick Frost. I think those Nick Frost especially for me was a really great. I think his name was Gobber. You know, in the original movie, he's very low key and very subtle with all the things he does. This one, it felt a little bit more heavy handed with how he feels and what he does. But I think that worked really well, and it made him seem like an even more important character. Um, because in the original, I don't think it's ever confirmed that this is true, but I always felt like Gobber was gay. I don't know, but they never actually say that, and I don't think they even say that here. But I think it's also more believable in this one, just the way he interacts with other characters. Nothing like that is specifically saying that. It's just how I feel about it, right? Um, and then even Gerard Butler, who actually voices Stoic in the original cartoon, brings a new life to the character in this version. Um, and I think that's awesome. The music is just as great as it was in the original. I think they either changed some things about the original score or redid the original score in a different way. Um, like I think I read something about it being like different versions of those songs or something, which that's cool. I love that. Um, let's see. Oh, yes, another thing about this is that like it being live action, some of these action scenes are much more dramatic and they make you feel more because of it being real people in a real place, right? For me, the biggest example of this is the scene where Hiccup and Toothless fly for the first time and they end up messing up while they're flying and they both go falling. That scene was actually scary in this version because that's a real kid and he was about to freaking die. Like it was freaking crazy. But, you know, that I guess that's part of the appeal, I guess, of more of a live action version. So for me, it is hard to hate on this. My biggest gripe being that I don't think it was needed, but it's here, and I honestly think they did a great job with it. I think it makes the beautiful world um, created for the original that much more accessible. You know, for those people who can't watch cartoons or whatever. Uh, that being said, I still think the original is a much better experience, and I'll always choose to return back to that original one than this one. So for that, I give this a 6.5 out of 10 as well. All right. So next, we'll be getting into Fantastic Four, the first steps, or I think it's just first steps. Let me see. So Fantastic Four, first steps. We've all heard of the Fantastic Four, right? There's four of them, and they're fantastic. In fact, it's great branding. This new entry in the MCU follows the story of Reed Richards, Sue Storm, Johnny Storm, and Ben Grimm as they journey into space and come back with superpowers. Uh, Taking on the mantle of the Fantastic Four as Mr. Fantastic, the Invisible Woman, the Human Torch, and the Thing. Now, 4 years later, things are changed as Sue is now pregnant, and the Earth is visited by a mysterious figure known as the Silver Surfer, who heralds the coming of Galactus, a cosmic entity who devours planets. Okay, so as a kid, when I talk about super comic book superhero movies, I always kind of have to preface that I don't really read superhero comic books. It's never really been my thing. I've read other kinds of comic books, sure, but I've never been like someone who like buys the new Marvel comic line or something like that. But I've always grown up with these superhero movies, right? Like I was a kid in the age of the of Sam Raimi's Spider Man, of these Fantastic Four movies, you know, all the X-Men movies, stuff like that. So I grew up with them and I did love them. But this is a whole different kind of movie, from the visuals to the world building to the acting. Just everything about it is it feels different than any of those movies. Um, I think all the actors did a great job as their respective characters. The only thing that I felt like was bad about any of these characters would be Johnny, who I still liked in the movie. I just felt like he didn't seem much like himself. Though I've never actually read comics, but comics you hear about it all the time, and you see scenes from them or cutouts, whatever little clips that you would read in a comic, and you see that Johnny Storm is kind of like a silly playboy type character. That doesn't mean he's not smart as well, but he's usually played up with that arrogant, bravado type deal. And I feel like he was kind of toned down here, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think they either might be building up to more of that. Maybe they didn't have time to talk about that in this movie. But yeah, it's definitely a different twist on the character. He's not the usual Johnny that we're used to seeing. Um, I also think, they tried to avoid being an origin movie. With this being the first Fantastic Four movie in the MCU, people have been excited about something like this for years, since the MCU first started, pretty much. I feel like. I feel like we've all been waiting for the Fantastic Four. We love the Fantastic Four. I think historically the Fantastic Four is more popular than the Avengers. They're a great set of characters and they have great stories and villains and all these things. So we've all been excited for this. And so we kind of know their story for the most part. You know that they go to space, they come back with powers, they fight different people like Galactus and Doctor Doom and stuff, blah blah blah. So we know all these things. We didn't really need a rehashing of that, which I think is good. You know, I, they kind of did the same thing with Spider-Man. until they kind of went back and said that the first three movies is the origin story. I don't know, that was kind of funny, but either way, they kind of did the same thing where they just kind of skipped past the origin, and I think that works a lot of times. Just in comparison to the last superhero movie I saw, Superman, they skipped his origin. They kind of just throw you into Superman's world and what he's been doing. And they do the same thing here. They do give you a little spiel about where they come from. Like I think there's like maybe 4 or 5 minutes at the beginning where they kind of go into what happened to them and what's been happening these past few years since they've been to Fantastic Four. They fought different enemies. They have this introduction of like these people living underground, and they got like this mole man dude, and you know it just keeps piling up how different this world is than the MCU that we're used to, right? Which is great. I think it's so much fun. Um, when you're seeing all these different things, all these different aspects and things in the background, how the world works, you just see that it's so much different than anything we've seen in Marvel to date, you know? And I love the world that they lived in so much. I think it was 838, this universe that I would love to see more in this universe, whether it's just more Fantastic Four stuff, or even bringing in different versions of characters that we already know and love in the MCU and into this universe. I think that would all be awesome. I think it's all something that is very promising, and very brave. I think of Marvel to do this late into the Marvel game. I think we're what, like 30 movies or something into this thing, so to do that big switch up like that. And this isn't like the brand new Marvel universe yet. I don't know. I've heard rumors that they want to soft reboot Marvel. Maybe they go for it in this universe. Who knows? But as of right now, that's not really the case. I still think this is a fun universe and idea to explore, and they have time to do that. You know, um, yeah. So yeah, it shakes things up in the MCU in the best way. And with that stinger at the end of Thunderbolts, we see that they're obviously in the regular 616 universe. So I can only imagine that Secret Wars is going to be this crazy fun thing from Marvel that we haven't seen probably since Endgame. And I will say that a little bit of that doesn't feel as earned, but I think if you like Marvel and you're having fun with what you're seeing so far, I think we should all just go for it. I think they were smart with kind of cutting back production on things. It does suck as a Marvel fan because you love going to see Marvel movies, but I think it's smart of them to hold back. I don't necessarily think superhero fatigue is the right word of what was going on. I think it was Marvel fatigue, really. But with them being aware of that and then doing things to change it, smartest move Marvel's done in a long time, honestly. Um, I had a lot of fun with this. I won't say it was perfect. Definitely had its downsides. I think the story itself was kind of bland. Um, I think the first act is so fun because you're seeing all these new things that you're not used to, and then you get into the Galactic stuff. And that second act just didn't hit as hard for me. There are some good scenes in there, but I just don't think that it was as good as the first act. So I was starting to get bored by the end of it. Um, like a lot of it is very cookie cutter MCU movie stuff, which okay, it's the MCU, so they're gonna do their thing. But for something that's so dramatically different, just visually and all those things, you would think they would try to kind of switch up the formula a bit, but they don't really do that. And but it's still a fun ride. Um, then another thing that people were very mad about is the baby, Franklin, Sue Richard, and Reed Richards' son. Um, I didn't hate him as much as other people did, but he's obviously a CGI baby. I don't think it was that bad. Definitely not as bad as that damn demon baby from Twilight. That was scary. And I don't think it was that bad. Some people are saying it's that bad or worse. No way. No freaking way. Renesmee from Twilight is probably one of the worst crimes to film in the past 30 years, you know? Um, but just for me personally, I don't feel like this movie had as much going for it as Superman did. I'm just saying Superman because that's the last superhero movie that I saw, not because I feel like it has to compare itself to Superman. But I saw Superman and I enjoyed it quite a bit. I don't think this movie had as much heart as Superman did. I didn't really feel the moral of this as much as I did in Superman. It just felt like another MCU vehicle, even with all the things that make it different and unique. It just still felt like that to me. Definitely didn't hate it. I think it's good. I think the good of it mostly outweighs the bad, just kind of like K-pop Demon Hunters. Excited to see what's next from Marvel's first family and see how we can come back to this world in the future in whatever way that may be. This for me is another 6.5, which is crazy. I don't think I've ever given this many 6.5s or even the same number of ratings for a whole episode like this. Swear I'm not just like looking at a spreadsheet or anything. This is literally just generally these were good but not amazing movies for me. Nothing wrong with that though. These weren't bad movies at all. I think these are all um, movies that you should go and see if you want to. Remember, this is just my opinion. We're all entitled to one. My name is Joshua Guerrero, and this is